Good evening. It's Wednesday, August 24th, 2022, and this is What's Happening Dracut. Welcome to the show, folks. It's a beautiful summer night, and we are preparing here a great show for you. And very nice, very nice, very nice. I didn't get that until that's it. That's interesting. My head, a little bit of a spook there tonight on us, but we're here. We prepared a great show for you tonight, folks. That was cute, Richard.
I love
cute,
you, John.
Richard.
I love
number
you,
40, episode number 40 for you folks out there, and we are coming to you live from our overly ostentatious studios here at Dracut Access Television on Mill Street in Dracut. I'm your host, John Zimini, and I hope to keep this show moving and lively. Of course, I don't need it with this crew, the way this crew goes. As always, you can join us from any sort of different mediums. You can join us on your phone by going to DracutTV.org, and we're live streaming, or you can go on Facebook at What's Happening Dracut.
We have YouTube too.
And you can go to the YouTube isn't live, Richard, and that's Gordy's job. But he just throws that up whenever he gets a chance to do that. But we have a bunch of great things to discuss tonight, and we're going to get into that real quick. But I got to tell you, the weather has been just so good in the last few weeks. I mean, I know we have a drought, and I know that things are really dry out there, and we hope that you're summering through it. And those of you that have swimming pools are lucky. My wife and I ended up going to Kennebunk for a couple of days, and we had a great time. And how about you, Gordy? What have you been doing?
I just got back from vacation. So
Gordy Scott, you went to Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, yep. It was my wife's 50th birthday, so I asked her where she wanted to go. She wanted to go to Wisconsin, so she's a cheap date.
Very cheap date. Cheap date? That wasn't cheap. But did you drive out or did you
No,
fly?
we flew. We had some issues with the airlines.
Of course.
One of our flights, I actually tracked it. We would have gotten in like 4 o'clock in the morning, so we said, screw it, we stayed another day. And but it was good. We had a great time. The weather was perfect. It's green out there. Great weather. We had a really, really excellent time. Went fishing. We did a lot of different things.
And Richard, the Cub reporter, he took his first trip, by the way, folks, and there's a story behind that story, but we won't get into that because we don't want Mom and Dad to get all whacked out here tonight. Richard, how was your trip to Wisconsin? Not to Wisconsin, Mississippi.
John, it was beautiful. It's so quiet. You know, for those of you who watched my early morning little clips sitting on the bench outside with all the cows, the town has like 154 people, no post office. It's in the town next door. It's exactly what I needed to relax and rejuvenate.
So, you're ready to rock and roll?
Absolutely.
And you've got a clip on that, right?
I do have a clip
Okay,
on
and we'll show that a little bit later, and we'll get into that. But we have with us also our mainstay of our guests, the guy who's about town. He's on 50 different committees in town and gets accused of all kinds of stuff by the nefarious people in town. Phil Thibault's in the house, folks. Hi, Phil.
Hey, how are you?
So, Phil, what have you been doing during this hot weather?
Well, luckily the office is air conditioned, except when I have to go on site, and then it can become brutal. But I'm, just working away. But by the way, that should say hereby wall. Number 2 comb.
That's funny. That's funny. So you can join us, folks, if you want to call in at 978-957-4243, and you can join in the fun and the conversation as we get rolling here. We're going to have a couple of things that we're going to discuss. We've got a lot on our page here tonight, so we're going to get started with our weather report from our weather specialist, meteorologist, and entrepreneur extraordinaire, who, by the way, just come back from a little jaunt in Las Vegas. But what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. But Sean is here tonight with another forecast for the upcoming weather over the next week. Sean, take it away.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me on tonight. And here's the forecast for tonight. 66 degrees we're going to drop to tonight in the Merrimack Valley, and it will be humid, especially as we head into the overnight hours and into the day on Thursday. As we head into Thursday, high temps in the 90s, low 90s, 91 degrees for us back here in Dracut. as we head into the day on Thursday with mostly sunny and hot conditions. Then as we head into Thursday night, temps are going to drop into the 60, 65 degrees for low temp as we head into Thursday night with clear conditions. Here's a look at your exclusive 8-day forecast. 91 degrees for your Thursday, and then as we head into the weekend, there is a slight chance for a few thunderstorms, especially as we head into the second part of Friday. Saturday and Sunday right now look nice with partly sunny conditions with high temps in the low to mid 80s. And that's the forecast for now, everyone. Have a great day.
Sean, get nice legs there, buddy. You know, not that you know, I love you, Sean, but in a non-sexual way. But 65-degree weather is getting better at night for the tubby time. Mm-hmm. You know, the tubby time is important time of the night for me to kind of unwind from the day. So thank you, Sean, for that great report. Our resident weatherman from Mill City Weather. He's a great guy, and he's right on the ball. I don't have to worry about him. If he's in town, he's got us covered. So a couple of upcoming events that we wanted to talk about. We got the September elections coming up, the primary elections, both Democrat and state and Republican primaries. And I don't think there's a Democrat running against Colleen Gary. Am I right?
I don't believe so.
No. So there'll be, and there's no Republican running against Brian Bogue.
No, but if you want to write in Phil Thibault, 45 Peabody Ave.
There you go. There you go. There you go. So that's one of the main things we're going to talk about. We're going to get into that in a little bit later in our later segment. But I wanted to send out some get well messages. I know we've talked about this a couple times, but we really are praying for Carol Morosky to get a swift and quick recovery. She's got a little bit of a fight on some leukemia, and she's had her ups and downs, but she seems to be doing well, and she seems to be taking some of the chemotherapy in the right way. And we send our regards out to the Morosky family as well as Moose, who is a faithful watcher of ours. We have a couple of condolences. Phil, you have one?
Yeah, Raymond Lenier of the DPW passed away last week. He was on the DPW for, I think, 27 years.
You know, Ray is one of those guys that can put anything together and repair things, especially during the years when our fire department vehicles were falling apart and we couldn't afford to do anything with them. And he would, you know, stick them together with wire and bubble gum.
Yeah, kept the fire department running.
Keeps the fire department going. And you also had one, right?
Yes, my neighbor David Whitaker passed away in a tragic motorcycle accident the end of July. So it's been tough in our neighborhood. It's been a tough time for a bunch of the neighbors. He was well loved in the neighborhood. Always walked the dog around the neighborhood. And on another note, the kid that was down the street, Keith Titus, he was in a very tragic accident as well. But he actually survived it. He hadn't been walking, but he had his last surgery, and happy to say he's now walking.
Oh,
so
great. That's good news.
So we've had some major motorcycle accidents on our street, so it's good to, you know, had bad news on one, but fortunately we ended up with a good note with Keith. He's doing well. He's recovering. I talked to him yesterday, and he's doing well.
And we want to send our regards out to the Keefe family, because Tom Keefe passed away at the age of 93 years young. I think it was last week or whatever. And, you know, he was a part-time assessor here in town. He was very well known. He's the head of a very, you know, the titular head of a very well-liked community family. He did a lot in this community, and we send our regards out to him.
You know, John, his sons are also, you know, wonderful people.
Yep.
They run the antique store across the street from
Exactly.
us. I go in there about once a month and talk to them, and I just bought a nice little desk from them. So it's an all-around great family.
They're a great family.
Absolutely.
On that note, we want to talk a little bit about Romeo Demers. Phil and I had the opportunity, and Richard had the opportunity to go to Romeo's, retirement party. It was at Lindsay's last Sunday. And I know that Gay and Bob did some video taping, and I'm sure they're going to have a show on it. And we have a little video of Romeo leaving the fire station. Go ahead, give it a shot. There's Romeo. He's driving the old-fashioned truck. I'm sure Bud Gunther let him use that.
I'm
Bud Gunther
sure.
was there, by the way, and he looked great, didn't he, Phil?
He absolutely did.
They don't make fire trucks like they used to.
No, that's Romeo riding off into
Yeah.
the sunset.
Final shift.
We wish him well. We wish him well. But there was an important day yesterday for our friend and colleague here at DATV, right?
Yes.
Tammy Dristolaris
Turned 39.
39. Oh, did you say 29?
39.
39, yeah, yesterday. And we want to wish her a happy birthday. And I'm sure that George did something nice for her, or maybe he's going to do something nice for her.
I would hope so.
I mean, because she's a star, right?
Absolutely.
Right? And we wish her a happy birthday and many, many more.
I did want to throw one other thing out there, John. So after I got back from vacation, I did go have my you and I are both prostate cancer survivors. So I
yes.
did go through all my tests, and I am cancer-free, 100%.
Oh, great.
So,
Fantastic.
my blood work came back, and I'm all good.
So now you got to go through
We
that
got some
whole
good
thing.
news.
You got to go through that whole thing for the next 5-6
Right,
years.
right.
Because I'm in year 6, and so far so good, knock on wood. Everything's good with us too. So,
Yep. So
well, much to the chagrin of our enemies.
yes.
And we had one other good piece of news. Welcome to Gordy Scott, the newest member of DATV Board of Directors.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, he's replacing a young lady who retired, left our board to take care of her mom, and that's Joanna Harris. And she decided that she didn't have enough time to spend to get involved or be fully involved the way she wanted to be with DATV. So she's taking care of Reverend Robinson, I believe her name is.
Yep, and I mean, to Joanna's credit, when she takes on a task, she goes all in.
Right.
So when she was on the board, she did quite a bit of work.
Right.
And I know taking care of her mother, she's going to be doing quite a bit of work.
Well, that's good. So, Gordy, welcome to the Board of
Thank you.
Directors. And
Thank
welcome to the Teflon Gordo will soon not be so Teflon. But anyways, we did have scheduled tonight, and I put out a promo about it. We had scheduled Jeff Deal, who is the Republican candidate for, he's the Republican candidate for governor of Massachusetts. And he was scheduled to come in this morning and tape a segment with us, but because of a scheduling snafu, I was dealing with a couple of interns. The first intern screwed up, and the second intern, we rescheduled it to tape it this morning, and that somehow fell off of the schedule also. But I did talk to the head communications director for his campaign, Peggy Rose, who was very gracious and apologetic, and we are tentatively rescheduling him to come in on next Tuesday to tape a segment, because we will have a confirmed segment with Chris Doty next Wednesday morning also. So next show will be pretty much a lot to do with the gubernatorial election that's coming up on September the 6th. So we have all them on, we're going to have them in then, and then I hope to eventually get whoever the elected nominee is, or the chosen nominee is, the Republican Party, and we'll try to get Maura Healey, who is the anointed Democratic nominee for governor in Massachusetts. We'll see if we can get them, both on after the primaries are over. So we'll keep that going. So we have our Cub reporter back from his vacation. Now, I don't want to get too deep into it, but Mom and Dad had a little issue with you. You just scheduled this thing on your own?
So basically what had happened, and I was sitting there, and this was before August. In August, I can't leave work at the local school department because it's our busiest month with new registrations. And so I said, I really miss my family down there, and I wanted to go down there so badly, and I knew I wouldn't be able to with school starting up and with work. So I said, you know what, I'm going down. And I know I'll never be able to convince my parents, so you know what? Let's buy the ticket and then worry about the consequences afterwards. Because what's the saying? It's better to beg for forgiveness than ask permission.
That's right.
So I bought the ticket, I brought my laptop in the house, showed my mother, and I said, this is happening. I won't repeat what her and my father said afterwards, but the next morning we all woke up, we were all in agreement, and let me tell you what a fantastic time it was. I have no regrets whatsoever.
Well,
Not
that's
at all.
good. So set up this little piece that you put together for us for tonight.
So while I was down there, I knew that, there's such a huge stigma against the South, calling them racists and bigots and whatnot. And I figured I'd take the opportunity while I was down there to interview a few people, specifically a pastor at their historical society. And I put together a nice little piece, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So let's roll.
Play it.
My name is Robert Long. I'm the curator of the DeSoto County Museum in Hernando, Mississippi. I am a 14th generation Southerner, a 7th generation Mississippian. We in Mississippi, probably perhaps more than any other state in the nation, have come to terms in large part with our past. What is it about the South? Why are you people obsessed with the past? Why all this talk about honor and chivalry and all of this? Faulkner made an observation years ago, which I think is very apt to this day. Faulkner said, and this would be at the height of the Civil Rights Movement, Faulkner said, in the North, in general, I'm speaking generally here, but Faulkner, as Faulkner did, Faulkner said Northerners tend to say that they love the race, African Americans in particular, but yet on the subway they would not look an individual in the eye. There's no local intimacy, there's no deep bond. In the South, it was politic during the days of segregation for white Southerners in particular to say that they hated the race, but yet in their heart of hearts they loved the individual because they played within the individuals as children. Many had African American nursemaids when they were young, so those roles often would be at odds with one another. We honor North and South, East and West. We honor all people. We make a great effort to be diverse. One of our most recent exhibits are Patriots of Color, African American men who fought for their freedom, put on the uniform of the Federal Union in an effort to gain their freedom, and to live their lives, and to pursue freedom and all the things that all freedom-loving people wish to have. The South is a very complex place. Is it perfect? By no means. But I think because so many of the major atrocities were committed here, it was up to our generation, those of us post the Civil Rights Movement who were very young at the time, to confess and atone and be truth tellers of what went on, and try to say, well, where do we go from here? What lessons have we learned from that horrible era in our history? So to redeem oneself, there has to be atonement. There has to be an honest accounting of what took place. Ownership of those atrocities, whether one committed them or not, has to be taken upon the children of those perpetrators in many respects, to carry on and to go forward and to try to build a better world.
Well, Richard, that was quite the piece. That guy really.
He was quite a gentleman.
Yeah.
If I do say so myself.
I'm not sure his observation is quite right about the northern hatred for, during that period of time. But It certainly was. I remember vividly remember the 60s when, busing was a big issue. I remember Martin Luther King and all of the things that were going on down in the South, and some of it that was up here, but it was mostly in the South. But John Kennedy tried to stop some of that, right, Phil?
Yeah, it's trying to legislate a culture, which you can't do.
Right.
So, I mean, culture has to change, and it has been changing through the children and how they see things, and it keeps changing.
So Richard, off here, you told us a little bit about what the significance of the bell was.
Yes, so the bell was installed in 1837 and was used in the town for fires and whenever there were emergencies. But more importantly, during the Civil War, it alerted the town when the Yankees were coming down the way. So they rang it in my honor as a Yankee visiting the town.
Right,
but I wanted to touch on what Phil said. I think you're absolutely right, Phil, where you mentioned that as future generations grow up, the attitudes in the northern and southern cultures do change. Because as I had mentioned to you guys off air, while I was down there in that museum, they had a beautiful memorial for actually the children who perished in the Holocaust. And I believe we have 2 photographs. If we can bring up one of them, the wide shot that I had taken, if we can pull that up.
There it is.
Yes. So basically what had happened is the children in the town collected over 2.5 million pennies to represent the 2.5 million children who were murdered in the Holocaust. And now those are actually only 36,000. They couldn't display them all. And I actually have another picture of that little bronze statue in the middle, if we can take a look at that. And it basically represents, like I said, the children who perished in the Holocaust.
So those people are you're talking about Jewish children, right?
Correct.
Right. So all of those children, there were 200 and what? 2 million?
2.5 million.
2.5 million. Wow.
Children. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So I think that was a really touching tribute from a place that's
Sure.
supposedly so
And they still have those pennies down in that.
they still have them.
Wow. So how did that compare to our historical society?
So John, as you know, don't put me on the spot, John. As you know, I serve as
You're gonna get it for that little hair thing earlier.
I serve as secretary, as you know, of the Dracut Historical Society. And I think we have a great museum.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to compare because the museum down there that you saw was recently built. So it was a new building built as a museum, where ours serves, as a colonial home, representing what life was like back in the 1700s in Dracut. So I almost think it's comparing apples and oranges.
Much different.
Yeah.
Much
So I see aspects of their museum that I like, such as the interactive displays you could see if you went to our Facebook page that I recorded. And I think we could implement some of that.
Right.
But, at the end of the day, I love the Dracut Historical Society.
Sure.
It's where my
Gordy,
heart is.
in Wisconsin back in the day, back in the 60s and 70s, they weren't much as affected by all this, right?
Thank you.
No, and I grew up similar to what Richard's talking about in a very small town. I lived in a place called Viroqua, Wisconsin, and it was the county seat, and we had less than 3,000 people.
Yeah.
But we did, when I was growing up, I didn't see an African American person. I never saw one.
See.
So it wasn't until I moved down to Chicago and went to school down in that area that I was kind of introduced to that.
And me, conversely, I grew up in Chelsea. And Chelsea was one of the most diverse communities in Massachusetts, if not in the country. It was certainly the most densely populated city, and still is today. It's 1.8 square miles. It's not even 2 square miles.
Yeah.
And today it has 80,000 people living in it.
That's
and the
crazy.
community diversity there has shifted and is now mostly Hispanic and Vietnamese and Cambodian and things of that nature. But there's still a very strong population of all different immigrants. And I mean, we grew up. We were in neighborhoods and we never had problems like you saw in Boston during the 60s.
Well, speaking of Boston in the 60s, I think last year you and I had a conversation about the Boston busing incident.
Right.
And I think you were a little flabbergasted on what I had told you that I was taught in class. So before we talked about it in class, I had no idea what it was. I had never heard of it. And what the teacher basically described to us is that it was a bunch of racist white kids in Boston who didn't want to go to school with black people, and so they rioted and stabbed people with flagpoles. That is actually what we were taught. So, and for somebody who was there, you had told me that,
Yep.
to the contrary.
No, it wasn't really like that at all. What it was happening was the neighborhoods, they were trying to infuse the neighborhoods
Yeah.
and desegregate neighborhoods that were totally segregated.
Yeah.
And South Boston was a pretty tough place at the time. It was all white Irish and people, and that was one of the main focal points of most of the violence that occurred and people bringing out their racism. But anyways, we're happy that that's not the case today.
Absolutely.
And
Our
that-
times have changed.
and that all of those things that have gone on over the past are in the past, but we should never forget them. Like the Holocaust, we should never forget the past.
Amen.
Which we can get into in another day. But we're going to move on to Dracut politics and what's going on with the Dracut Board of Selectmen. So Gordy put together a little piece of one particular committee person's in town who was a little upset at some comments made by the manager. Why don't you set that up and then play that video?
Sure. So I was on vacation when the precursor to this video happened.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think the director of the CPC was a little taken aback about some of the comments made by Ann Vandal, the town manager, in regard to how CPC was organized, how things were purchased through the town, and how they kept meeting minutes and stuff like that. But I'll let the
But
video
before
speak.
you go to that, these comments were made during the Board of Selectmen meeting or a workshop about the manager's goals.
Correct.
Right? And she was commenting on how minutes of the meetings weren't
Being taken.
taken or posted, which was really one of the main points that the committee chairman was trying to make. And the committee chairman's name what's his name?
Bruce Cody.
Bruce Cody.
Cody, yeah.
Bruce Cody, right. It's just escaped me. So why don't you
Okay.
play that piece and then we'll discuss it.
So Nate, I'm going to bring this up on my laptop
Yep.
here. If you can just.
Myself tonight, but I am also chairperson of the Community Preservation Committee, or CPC. I am responding to some of the town manager's statement made relative to CPC during the August 2nd BOS meeting. Specific quotes include, on the purchase of the Beaverbrook Farm, the town manager stated, they bought that project. Later, the CPC bought that property. Again related to the CPC, they have not made plans for one new piece of property that they bought. Finally, the town can't assume liability for properties that they buy automatically. So why these quotes? Because the word they, implying the CPC alone buys and owns things. This is not a correct characterization of the CPC. The CPC approves funding for projects or acquisitions related to open space, recreation, housing, or historical preservation. Those funds are town dollars collected via a 2% surcharge on our property taxes, augmented by a partially matching grant from the state. The CPC does not buy or own anything. The town buys the land or funds the projects. The process includes multiple steps of review and approval beyond the CPC and before going to town meeting for vote. Using they instead of we is misleading and inappropriate, and it alludes to denial of ownership. We've been reminded by the town manager that the town owns Beaverbrook Farm and will determine what happens there. Agreed, the town does indeed own that property. The Community Preservation Act was the mechanism by which the town acquired it. There are other statements made regarding the lack of CPC process and structure. Agreed, there are process and documentation issues, and these are being worked. I would like to thank the BOS chair for recognizing the process work the committee had completed. Finally, on this topic, there have been no land purchases since I joined the CPC in 2017. My feedback tonight is simply to address the inaccuracies presented. There is one other comment that I must personally address. While discussing the goal of meeting minutes, the town manager picks on the CPC as an example of meeting minutes probably not being done because there is no staff support. No, not only was that wrong, but it was a statement I took at personal offense. As chair, I have been diligent with ensuring adherence to creating and posting meeting minutes. I record all meetings. I spend 2 to 3 hours transcribing them. I send them to the committee for review. I have them approved as quickly as possible given issues with meeting attendance, and I hand deliver them to Samantha Carver at the town manager's office. If one looks at the CPC page, one will see an up-to-date list of meeting minutes. That said, the CPC is grateful to have staff assigned as of the August 2nd CPC meeting. Given these and other statements blaming volunteers for some town woes, I think it's a fair question to ask where the buck stops. Does it stop at the feet of volunteers, or does it stop at the feet of some paid professionals in town hall? Thank you.
Quite the video, huh? That was quite
Wow,
the statement by her.
he
He was really taken aback by her comments,
Yeah.
huh? My question comes, and look at, I've been accused of a lot of things in town, particularly talking about the manager and, you know, her ability to manage. But this is a telling thing, in my view, that how can the manager not know that all of the meetings are being posted on
At least, especially when you make a statement that they're not, you should have knowledge either way, right?
Yeah.
I think.
Well, he really put her in her place, didn't I think?
Absolutely, and rightfully so. I mean, years ago, as you know, when I was campaigning, it was one of the issues I had is that the schools and the government were always, you know, us against them type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a perfect case of, you know, us against them again, coming up again. And I thought a lot of that had been put aside, but apparently it's just been redirected.
Yeah, I made a little note about they, them, CPA, and not knowing whether or not the town owns it or CPA owns it. CPA doesn't own anything. All they do is administer the expenditure of the monies that are collected.
And make recommendations
And make
on
recommendations
properties,
on top of it.
As a
what
matter of
they're
fact,
supposed to do.
I think the articles at town meeting start with, you know, I make a motion that the town of Dracut purchase
Right, exactly.
using CPC funds.
Exactly. You know, I understand she's got a lot on her plate, and it may be that she's a little overwhelmed at times, and it's just, you know, when you're in government, the biggest thing is the art of deflecting as much as you possibly can for as long as you can, right? So it's sad that you had a committee member like, a dedicated committee member like Bruce Cody, who spends hours upon hours, you know, preparing minutes and then not having the manager know that the minutes are even posted. I wish they paid that much attention to the minutes for the Board of Selectmen, which we're going to get into later on tonight, that Heather Hutchings brought up, which, you know, I watched Heather during that August 2nd meeting. She was tremendous on some of the questioning. She's so level-headed and so even-tempered, and me, I'd be pushing back at some of the stuff that was going on that thing. But for the CPC chair to be doing that.
Well, my point was going to be, put yourself in his shoes. If you're the chair of the CPC and you're spending a lot of time taking the notes and then putting them into a document and then sending them out, getting them approved, and then getting the approval back and then sending it to someone in the town hall to get them posted. You're spending hours and hours, and then the town manager says you're not doing it.
I'll bet you he's going to
Like-
he's going to have a little problem getting reappointed at some point.
Well,
Well,
that and you're not going to get people volunteering.
No,
People see
that
this
gets
and
to
they're
the
like, why do
biggest
I
point.
want to volunteer?
That's the biggest point, because at the end of the day, after you volunteer, you're going to get this sort of welcome. I mean,
Right.
that they aren't doing their job, and it's all their fault. And
yeah.
here
They
you
should
are
be
just trying to-
appreciative of these people because it's
absolutely.
taking work off of their plates and providing it on a gold platter for them to actually take action on.
Which brings me to a point, right? It brings me to the Beaverbrook Farm Ad Hoc Committee.
There's another good example.
That was created to try to bring suggestions, right, Phil?
Well, that's what the claim is. I'm not sure if that's what their actual objective is.
Right. Their objective. There are members of that committee who are on the committee by virtue of being on other town committees to make recommendations and to have open discussions and things of that nature. We were at a retirement party on Sunday, right, Richard? And there was a guy there who was representing another board, which I'm not going to get into who it was, but he was telling us how frustrated he was. Do you remember what that conversation was all about, Richard?
It was basically, from what I understand, along the lines that everything that he tried to propose, onto the
Yep.
board, that would fulfill the supposed goal of the board was getting washed away. Nobody would pay any attention to him, and he thought it was the most peculiar thing he's ever witnessed.
And he couldn't get a second.
You couldn't get a second for even for discussion, which is really just dumbfounding, because here you have an ad hoc committee that's trying to brainstorm about what to do with a parcel of land that's some 25 acres with outbuildings, and there's no discussion, because ultimately I think they're told there is no discussion. We want to get rid of the buildings.
They want to tear it down because this one particular member said that the reason the ad hoc committee was really put together, and this is a bad thing for the community, for members of the community to be thinking this, that the committee was actually put together for not really for an agenda to look out for what's best for that piece of property. They were put together to follow out and carry out in support of what the manager really wants to do down there and take away those buildings and some of the historical value of those buildings without even looking at it. And this particular member, this guy was frustrated. He was frustrated by it. And, you know.
I've had discussions with a developer who does a lot of work with historic properties and such, and he's worked with CPCs in the past in other communities. And there are ways of doing this and of getting the work done and getting, especially even some of these, you know, the corn crib and stuff like that, getting those back into a working order.
They want to spend $400,000 just to prevent it from falling down?
Well, that's, so right, essentially I think what they refer to as mothballing it, so it doesn't get any not making it better.
Not going to make it any better.
But there are other mechanisms if they wanted to do, you know, a public-private partnership sort of thing that is permitted to be done through CPC. The only problem is it takes work, and we know that's not going to happen.
Well, the chairman of that board, Richard, is Allison Janess, right?
Right.
And why she's one of the leading, well, she says she's an advocate, like her husband, of free speech and robust debate, but yet no one on that board would second the motion to allow debate on this particular issue the guy this friend of ours brought up. And why wouldn't they? I mean, why, if you are really a believer in debate, for the sake of discussion, you second the motion.
Well, you know, John, that's typical of Town Hall West, and that was obviously set up by design. And while I can't speak for these two organizations, as somebody who serves on the Land Trust and the Historical Society, it horrifies me to think there could be such a strong force in town who simply wants to rip down Dracut's historical buildings and completely forget about Dracut's past. I mean, it horrifies me. It's absurd.
Mm-hmm. What do you say about that?
Well, my only issue is, you know, I know there's a lot of these subcommittees and committees in town, and I know a lot of the selectmen are members of multiple committees. But why a select person would be a chairman of a subcommittee, because if I was on that committee, I'd be reticent to give out ideas because I know they already have their agenda, and being the chairman, they can direct that meeting how they want it to go.
Right.
So my personal opinion is, if you're a selectman, you should maybe be there as an advisory member of the board, but you shouldn't be the chairman of said board or be a voting member of that board.
Kind of act as a liaison of what you might think is.
So you should go to those meetings, let people discuss what they're going to discuss, and any issues that they need to resolve with the town, then let that selectman take that back to the selectmen and discuss it at open meeting at a selectmen's meeting.
You know, Gordy, I agree with you 100%. I'm not going to name it, but I belong to a veterans organization in Lowell, and we're kind of suffering from the same issue. You know, we're a subcommittee of a larger organization, and the head of this larger organization has attended all of our meetings for the past 8 years, and can I tell you that we haven't voted on a single thing in 5 years? Because
really?
how does the meeting show up? How does the meeting work out? We show up, and he directs us as to what is going to happen and what the bigger organization is and is not going to approve of. And I think we're seeing the same thing here with this Beaverbrook subcommittee. The chairman, who also serves on the Board of Selectmen, is steering the entire thing, whichever way she wants.
Right, and you're to that veterans thing. You're volunteering to that just for no reason, right? Other than that
right.
you care about veterans
Exactly.
and monuments and things of that nature. So, and the same thing with the gentleman who sat at our table for a couple of minutes and told us about
Absolutely.
his frustrations, right? But how does Janess get away with that stuff? I don't know. I don't understand. She appoints the committee, and then she makes herself the chairman. I mean, come on, you know? At any rate, you know, good luck to her on that stuff because it's only going to start blowing up in her face. We know that they are just chipping away at different things. And one of the things they're chipping away with, Phil, is trash collection, right?
Yeah.
Slowly but surely, they're directing trash to be for you to pay to pick up certain items, right? It used to be years ago that they picked up everything, right?
Yep, bulk items. So typically, up until just recently, you were able to put out one bulk item every week as long as you notified them of it.
Right. Now, under the guise of, the EPA is not allowing us to pick up this stuff and everything else, and we have to have a special company come in and pick up those items or whatever, like hazardous waste. They do have a hazardous waste day, but then they don't allow you to bring certain hazardous waste, like you can't bring latex paint. Where do you get rid of latex paint?
Oh, so latex paint, you're supposed to add a chemical which actually solidifies it, or you can dump it on a piece of plastic and let it dry out, and then you can throw it away in your regular trash.
Really?
Yes.
Now that makes a lot of sense.
How many people?
Painstaking.
How many people in Lowell living in a 3 tenement, or even in Dracut, single-family homeowners are going to take the time to do that?
You know, some I believe Habitat for Humanity has their restores or whatever they call it. I believe you can actually bring latex paint to them because they'll collect it all into a distribution center and they'll remix it and repackage it.
Well, Phil, isn't that kind of like the honor system? I mean, what is stopping somebody from taking a bucket of this latex paint, putting it at the bottom of their trash can, and piling things on top of it?
Other than when it finally starts to get through a process and paint is flying all over the place.
What are they going to do? They're going to track it down where it came from?
Well, they can track down what community it came from,
Right.
more than likely, and then
Right.
a fine goes out to the community.
Well, what I do is I usually open the cans up and let them dry out.
Yep.
Is that a typical way of doing it?
So
too?
yeah, that way I honestly I put kitty litter
Oh,
in
okay.
it and kind of make it solidified and then.
Good idea. I got plenty of that.
Yeah.
Used though, I can put used.
Well, that's
kitty litter.
that's fine. That's
Yeah, you
fine.
can put the used kitty litter in there.
But there are other the bulk items were, and I think just recently they were talking about mattresses, that they're going to stop taking mattresses or having an additional cost to picking them up.
And that was the point of my chipping away. So now, what was the estimated cost of taking away?
I think it was $40 or $50. I mean,
Yeah.
right now we have monitors and televisions that they'll be taken away. I think they're $25 a piece or something like that. And there's a few other items, white goods, which are appliances,
Right. And
are
Gordy,
taken away
you
from.
recently watched a meeting where they discussed that a little bit, right?
Yes.
And I think it was something to do with the goals, but without getting into about the goal and all that stuff. But why don't we tell us a little bit of what you observed during that
Yeah,
meeting.
so Ann was trying to push the fee for the mattresses because surrounding towns do it. So her worry is if you live in Lowell or if you live in Tewksbury, you have a fee there to pick up the mattress. So people are going to say, oh, Dracut has free things. They'll just bring it up and put it in front of someone's house
Yeah,
or just throw it in the woods or whatever.
which we see all the time.
Which
on
we do
those
see.
obscure roads and-
But I was surprised Joe DeRocco came to the defense of the taxpayer and said he didn't want to see that fee being passed on to the taxpayer, at least for this year.
Of course.
So-
He's got another year or so left.
And then
on
once
his-
that came out of his mouth, everyone else kind of backed down. And conversation was over. Okay,
Well, because he's the titular head of that
Right.
board, you know, whatever
how
Joe
dare you
wants.
say anything against him?
Interesting, I've heard a rumor this week,
Oh boy.
and it came from a very good, reliable source, that there are 2 people eyeing running for selectmen, either in the next election or the following election. One particular had been talking about running for the single seat, and the single seat is Joe DeRocco's
That's
seat,
correct.
right? And that person is Warren Shaw. So Warren Shaw is out there, and I think he said it on his radio show.
He has.
And so it's not breaking news here, but I can confirm that from reliable sources that he's got a serious look at running. And I don't think he's adverse to running against Joe.
No, he's been vocal about his displeasure on the way that the Board of Selectmen has been kind of operating over the past few years, and he doesn't like the direction that the town is taking.
Now, I'm wondering if he would run in this next election, because Allison Genest has now exposed herself as a person who, is in the satchel with Joe DeRocco, right? I wonder if he would take her on, but I think he really likes Heather Santiago, and sometimes Santiago Hutching, and sometimes when you do that, the person, it hurts the person that you really like. But I think Allison Genest has got a little bit of a problem getting reelected if a good candidate comes out, an energetic candidate, somebody who's not connected with any particular group, but is going to want to serve, because there's a lot of dislike for her and particularly her husband. Am I correct? Anybody want to jump in and say anything?
I can't disagree.
I know.
And honestly,
Well, you've been the subject of her husband's
so you start to
tongue.
take a look at, both Heather and Allison are up for re-election. Heather had somewhat of a slow start, but she's very observant. She was taking everything in and trying to figure out what her role would be, and you can see that over the past 6 months, she's really been ramping up and getting involved and really pointing to the areas that are bothering people, much like Warren Shaw, that, hey,
Right.
we're going in the wrong direction. We're not treating people equally. I mean, we have procedures that are okay for political allies, and we have procedures that are okay for political foes, and they're not the same. And then you look at what Allison Genest has been doing, and it's been consistent day one, whatever Joe wants.
That's right. She
So-
acquiesces to whatever
Yeah.
Joe wants, and she'll let Joe speak over. I mean, the code of conduct thing was a whole debacle. You saw that code of conduct where they went after Tony on that and what have you. And now you have Genest's husband going after a sitting member of the board in his articles at the Valley Patriot, trying to tear apart Tony's reputation, which is just beyond the pale. And I mean, how can she sit there and seriously, work with Tony? And I know Tony he can swallow some of the pride and work with her, but I could never do that and just sit there while her husband is knocking his block off.
Yeah.
I mean, Richard?
John, I think Dracut is just tired of the dirty politics. And I think at the heart of the dirty politics, you have the Genests. On one hand, you have Allison, who is what I like to call a plastic politician. She'll sit there and she'll throw dirt on people all day long, but then she sees you face to face, and it's a smile. It's a, how's your day going? How are you? What's going on in your life? And it's so clearly fake.
Yeah.
And the people of Dracut are sick of that. On the other hand, you have her husband, who, if you see him driving around town, which I'm sure many of you have, has decided to wrap his vehicle, his personal, everyday vehicle, in a complete advertisement for his show. John, you and I saw that at the DATV open house, and I think the people of Dracut are just sick of that.
Yeah.
They're sick of people gloating and boasting about their personal accomplishments like Brian does, and they're sick of the plastic, fake behaviors of people like Allison. So I really think they have some roadblocks coming.
Well,
up
she
ahead.
hides behind it. She hides behind it and says, "Well, I don't tell Brian what to put on his show." But it's really eye on Allison is what they're talking
Well,
about.
John, let me ask you this: who do you think wears the pants?
Oh, yeah. I'm not even going to go there. Hey, we have a couple of people watching tonight. Aubrey Perry, she's watching, and I know she's recovering from a bout with cancer herself. And you're looking pretty good there on Facebook, Aubrey. Keep
God
up the
bless
good
her.
work. God bless you, and we're praying for you. And Bob Lemire, who I had the honor of being on his podcast recently, I had a blast on that
Did you?
podcast. Yeah, we talked some sports, we talked some hockey and what have you. And he's awesome guy, and wish him all the best of luck too. But let's get back into some of this stuff about, the Board of Selectmen and how they boast about economic development, right? In your experience, Gordy, economic development isn't the opening of a little bakery.
No.
Where, it might be 2 or 3 people being employed by the bakery, and that bakery struggles to make it through its first 6-8 months, and then all of a sudden, what happened?
Right.
The bakery closed.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And I mean, they do this big thing about a ribbon cutting and the whole 9 yards, and then the bakery closes, and then right next door, they have another opening recently. And what was that about, Phil? Right?
That was Keller Williams real estate agency.
I mean,
Opening up
is this what we're reduced to? Saying that economic development in the town of Dracut is an opening of a realty office? I mean, come on.
Well, I can give you another small story of economic development. My neighbor is opening a brewery. So
Yep.
he wanted to do it in Dracut. He approached the town, and they gave him nothing but roadblocks.
See?
So he went to Tingsboro, and Tingsboro was like, how can we help you get this brewery in town? We don't have one, we want one. And he's like, well, here's what I'm doing. They helped him get the brewery license. They went to state to get more liquor licenses, and that's in process. So it's that kind of stuff that Dracut has to start doing if they want to get people in. They can't put up roadblocks. They got to put out a helping hand.
Right.
So.
Right, which is fine. I think it's a piece of the puzzle of having small businesses. I think that's a good thing. But to say that is economic development that's going to have a positive and big effect on the tax structure that will allow you to give more money to schools and police and fire, you need a $50 million project to come
Like a
in.
Walmart
Like Genesis.
Yeah.
That
Genesis
left because the town dragged their feet so much. And then you have, or the Arbors.
The Arbors was, I think, an investment of about $20 million.
$20 million.
Wow.
We also had
Circle Health.
the Giving Tree, which is up on Bridge Street across from Bridgewood Plaza. That was another investment of $20 million.
It'd be
So
good to
those
have
two
an Amazon.
combined-
Amazon would be good to.
Well, Amazon would be great, but you don't have the road structure for
Right.
Amazon to want to do
Right.
that.
But
But
something like that.
You need something of $40–50 million in one single year to do something to have a positive effect on the economic spillover, because economic development is supposed to be hiring of new people for new jobs and giving people some more money in their pocket to spend at the local bakery that can't last.
I just recently had a couple of interns from UMass Lowell from the business school, and they were helping out the town regarding the Navy Yard. There was a survey done a number of years ago that kind of sat on the shelf, and that kind of reviving it for this economic development. So they were told, go visit some business owners in the Navy Yard. So they happened to come to my office. And first of all, I said, did they give you the Navy Yard study? And I named a particular report, and they said, no, we haven't seen that. And then I named another report, and they said, we haven't seen that. I said, so I printed them out, and I said, here you go. So here I am, printing out information that the town should have given them right away.
Wow.
So a little birdie came to me. I have these little birdies.
got
that
these
come,
birds all
They
over
come
the
all over the place. They come from everywhere. And they came to me about the new legal services that we have that replaced Jim Hall. All right? Now, Jim Hall was a good guy. He was paid, a small amount of money compared to what these guys are getting now. But I understand, and Richard, I'm going to put you on this little thing to try to dig into it a little bit more. How much money have we spent on the new legal services provided by the new town council? And somebody dropped a figure to me of about $90,000.
Really?
And Jim Hall probably didn't make $90,000 in 2 years. Right?
Wow.
No,
as legal counsel.
Yeah.
So, and I don't even think they've been here that long. Now I could be wrong, and I'll apologize for that.
So
but
Jim Hall worked with town council with Dracut until the contract with DATV was signed,
right,
and that was March
March
of this year.
So March, April, May, June, and we've spent $90,000 already.
Wow.
There's
Wow.
a lot of lawsuits against the town, John.
There are a lot of lawsuits against the town. What are they? What are some of them that are out there?
I looked out up for the meeting minutes of the executive session, so they have the Chartrand one that's still out there.
Right.
There's a person, I believe, in the DPW, or it was a
No, he's from the police station.
police station.
That one's going to be resolved pretty soon, I think. But
But there was 3 or 4 of them up there in executive session. You can go look
Yeah.
at them.
and Justin George is a huge one.
Yeah.
That's going to be a civil rights type thing, and that's going to be huge. I think. I think some people are going to be
That'll be millions.
paying a price.
Yeah.
Paying a price. But we also had.
And then we have also the police chief has a lawsuit against the Board of Selectmen.
That's an open meeting violation.
Open meeting
Yeah,
violation.
so tell us about it. Do you know what that's about?
Well, it's something the police, if I remember right, the police chief was giving his status report, and then Tony asked about one individual in the police department getting taken off.
NEMCOG.
NEMCOG.
Not NEMCOG. NEMLAC.
Nemlak.
yeah.
And so there was a little bit back and forth, and he took offense to Tony asking him about said individual.
So that was Jonathan Siemens, I believe it
Yes,
was.
that is
was
correct.
taken off. And I think Zach Coleman was also removed from
Yes, because he was essentially, he took care of
the
the
dog.
canine.
The canine.
Yeah.
So the reason the chief said that was he was saying I saw some of that piece too. He was trying to say that some of it was because he wants to give other members of the department the opportunity to get training from NEMLAC. But from what I understand right now, and I could be wrong, there's currently nobody assigned to NEMLAC, which in order to receive that mutual aid from NEMLAC, you need to have members of your department on there, which means if we have an incident here, they could refuse to come.
They could.
That's part of their contract, right?
I believe that is correct.
And a little birdie told me a lot of the police officers don't like the police chief.
Well, no
A
kidding.
lot of birdies told me.
Oh yeah, it's out there. But what happened was the chief filed a open meeting violation against a sitting member of the Board of Selectmen. Now, how does the chief do that and not expect that that's going to taint the taste of the chief, in the mouths of the members of the board?
Yeah, honestly, it's frivolous. I mean, so the discussion comes that Tony's asking questions, and rightfully so. Hey,
Right.
Tony admits, yes, we have a strong chief, so you have control over the operations of the police department, but it doesn't mean that you can do anything without answering questions about it. So Tony made the point in his opinion that it seems like if you succeed in what you're doing, you're being removed from a position that you finally attained.
Right.
It seems like getting punished for
success.
for success.
Yeah.
And I guess this open meeting violation contends that because Tony said being punished, it all of a sudden becomes a disciplinary action, which the chief, I think, more than a dozen times said, there's no disciplinary action here.
Right. So, but I guess the board supported Tony in their decision of accepting the receipt of the complaint, but took no action on it, which essentially means that now, if the chief wants to do anything else, he's got to go further to the state to do something because the board's not going to do anything, which rightfully so.
Well, John, look at the way that Tony's colleagues treat him, right? Look at the way he's berated and how he's abused every meeting, him and Heather equally. What type of example does that set for the public and other town employees on how they can treat a sitting member of the Board of Selectmen? That's my question.
Which that does a good job of setting up the goals session that we had, right? And why don't we play that one little piece where Heather was talking about hiring more police, and at the goal session, they were talking. There was back and forth between her and the town manager, and I believe that's at 3146, right? Okay, let's play that for a couple of minutes and see where that goes. All right, Nate.
Platform that we can use. It's just a matter of time and staff to assist us with that, and that's our goal with the assistant.
Right, and I'm sure they have all kinds of templates, and
Yeah.
there are some very, very good websites from other cities and towns,
Yeah.
you know, in the Commonwealth, so.
It's all about time and resources,
It's
I'm gonna
it's
be
the
honest
platform, and we're ready to go with it, but it's finding the resources, meaning internally, to be
Right.
able to do that, and hiring this person will allow us to do that once we hire this
You know, the
person.
platform that I use in my employment, you press a button and it goes to Twitter and it goes to Facebook.
Right, and
it
that's what
goes
we'll get
the-
to.
You know, and it's just one button, all you have to do
with
is
that. But that's
press.
gonna cost money, Tony.
Yes,
So
because I'm
we're
not
probably
gonna do
gonna
it for
have,
nothing.
right, so we're probably gonna have to apply, join some sort of subscription service, and they base it on the number of employees or the population, and it ends up costing you 20 grand,
Right,
so.
yeah. No, I get it, I'm sure we can find a happy medium.
Yes, we can.
Okay, anything else on this one before we move on?
Madam Chair, I have a couple of questions. Why was this categorized as deferred from FY '22?
Because we didn't have the resources to meet the goal, and it's gonna be an ongoing goal.
Okay.
And
And
it's like we talked about earlier, it's
Yeah,
not
it
against,
is an evolving
yeah.
situation.
And we shouldn't hold her accountable for not meeting it because it was out of her control.
I think that's where I struggle with the purpose of the goal sometimes, because
Well,
if
some
we
of
don't.
them are gonna last 10 years.
Right,
you know.
right,
This could be one of
We'll
them.
have quite a list.
right. And I guess my other question is, part of this goal is based in the law, the last part where it says ensuring meeting minutes are approved and posted on the respective committee board page within the next 3 public body meetings or within 30 days, whichever is later, per Mass General Law 3822C. I think that was more my question about deferring, because we should already be doing this piece at least.
But we still don't have the resources to do
According
it.
to the law.
I mean, black and white is great if you have the money and the resources to accomplish black and white. We don't have the resources to do that.
So I think.
But the
I think
minutes.
The minutes being
Oh, yeah,
approved
the
is one
minutes are
thing,
up
but
there, yeah.
this is saying posting on the
Right,
website.
but we're not even doing the minute approval, and like our last meeting, we approved March 22nd.
Well, that's between the boards and their committees.
Is there any way to give the recording secretaries the tools to be faster, like the pads where you can write? And I mean, how much does one of those pads cost?
$500?
One of those pads
The
that,
pads that we've been using?
the pad's is about $500, yeah.
But is that just writing, or does that go into,
No, you
does
can,
that
well, we
transcribe?
have it, you can import it into Word and have it, it does translate into Word. We haven't tried it yet, we honestly haven't had them long enough to do that.
I mean, the other thing is whether we provide a laptop for the admins or the recording admins to take minutes, if that works.
I mean, we have to comply with the law. I guess that's my point, is we can't.
We do, but I don't disagree. I'm not trying to argue
Right.
that point. But there's a million laws.
Right.
And honestly, we have to prioritize certain things, and unfortunately, that is not one of the priorities. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah, I can give you the 10,000-foot view. 50.
I don't know if they can hear us. I hope you can hear us now. But it amazes me. Oh, there's a million laws. Is there anywhere, if we get
If I get pulled over,
Well,
can
you
I
didn't-
tell the police, there's a million laws, I just said break
You can't
this
follow
one.
all of them.
You can't follow all of them. I was only
So
speeding.
there's a little segment on the Simpsons show where Marge goes to talk to Chief Wiggums
Yeah.
about something that's happening in town, and he says to her, "Listen, we can't be policing the whole town." But of course, he's the chief of police. So I mean, it's to some degree, it's very comparable. Where Ann is saying, "Well, yeah, I'm the town manager, but I can't be managing the whole town."
Right. Right. And,
Wow.
I mean, they were talking about posting of the minutes and taking of the minutes and transcribing them, right?
Yeah.
So there's a tool out there that the school committee bought and allows their recording secretary to use as a tool to get the minutes done quicker, right? I'm sure it's got something to do with transcribing it automatically or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, voice to text.
yeah, voice to text type thing. And but Ann doesn't want to pay $500 to do that. It seems like she's dragging her. feet.
So if you pay $500 for that particular software, and it saves Shannon Rowe, the secretary of the Board of Selectmen, it saves her an hour every meeting.
Right.
You know, how much is she being paid
Paid
per
per
hour?
Multiply
over-
by 26 meetings a year.
But wait a minute. Shannon Rowe's job
Is absolutely
to be the secretary to the Board of Selectmen.
Correct.
So what's the number one thing that she should be doing?
If I was on the Board of Selectmen, I would say Wednesday morning, your first job is to complete those minutes.
Now, if we continue that,
don't answer the phone.
Right.
Get those minutes done.
If we continue the video, it will come to a point where she'll talk about, she's got to take trash calls and and whatever else she's been assigned by the manager to do, right? But your job, the number one job, and Shannon does a good job. This is not a hit on Shannon by any stretch of the imagination. It's more to help her. The bottom line is she should be dedicating her time to getting those minutes done.
She's not getting direction from the Board of Selectmen, who she serves.
Right.
These are priorities. And honestly, the chair of the Board of Selectmen should be saying this. Your job number one, Wednesday morning after a meeting, is get those meetings done.
Now, our illustrious legal services guy goes on to support what Ann says during that whole conversation about that the laws are out there and there's so many things. And in fact, this open meeting law that talks about having minutes posted should be revised because everything's videotaped, which isn't true. Not every meeting is videotaped. How about executive sessions, right? They're not videotaped. So you never really know what's going on in those things because they haven't released any minutes of those meetings in 5 years, according to a sitting member of the Board of Selectmen. The bottom line is that they just, they need to be better at it. And then they said, well, because they're all recorded and they're all put on social media and on YouTube or whatever else.
Well, John, this might sound ridiculous, but what about being inclusive? What about the deaf members of the community who might not be able to listen to a recorded meeting? That's true. And just for our records, we need to have a text of the minutes of the meeting. You have to have it.
Mm-hmm. And you're not really getting them. Go ahead.
When I was on the board of Dracut basketball board, we did all our meeting minutes. When I was on the recreation board for 7 years, we had all our meeting minutes done. I don't see why this is such a big problem, and I think you hit the nail right on the head. Is that Shannon doesn't have the dedicated time that she needs to get it done.
Because they're allowing her to get, just like they take the town council, who is the Board of Selectmen's council. They're the ones that hire him. They're the ones that fire him. He or she is supposed to be there to provide guidance to the Board of Selectmen, not the entire town. Right. There should be a separate entity for the entire town. I mean, these guys got to go to planning board meetings, help them with decisions on zoning and everything else.
When I first went onto the planning board had its own attorney.
Yeah, they don't have that now, do they? They don't have that now. You're flying by the seat of your pants, basically. So there was an exchange, between the manager and Heather that goes on, and that was where Heather was talking about describing the roles of what's the Board of Selectmen's role in strategic planning, right? It's kind of like you guys did the master plan, right? You did the master plan. What happened with the master plan?
It sat on the shelf for quite a while, and now at a selectmen meeting, we were informed by Ann, the town manager, that there'll be no more involvement of the public in this. We're going to do it all ourselves. So who knows how it's going to get done.
So the committee that was requested by the master plan to make sure that these things.
So we were looking for an implementation committee,
right?
So they could take the master plan, look at the long range, the medium range, and short range goals, and kind of make a priority of how to try to accomplish those.
Exactly. So now there's no member of the community involved with that at all, and there's not going to be. And that master plan is going to go the way of the last master plan.
Absolutely.
That sat on a bookcase and collected dust.
Yeah. So I mean, there was one that wasn't even adopted by the planning board, which back in '99. But so the one that predates that is 1968. So so we'll have another master plan done in 2050.
And how much was the taxpayers' dollars went into that?
That was, I think, about $100,000 went into that.
What's $100,000 here?
Yeah, three months worth of work.
Let's queue up at 1 .00.39, where this exchange goes on between the board, the Heather and the manager. And it gets quite telling as to where the manager was getting a little frustrated, I think. And Heather was too, but Heather kept her cool. Go ahead, play that for.
Responsibilities of these items that you mentioned here come under the role of the town manager, so I think you can comment further on that.
Well, yeah, and I think that the Selectman Handbook, as I said earlier, is a really good resource. It's written sort of generically. The town of Dracut, along with many other towns in Massachusetts, has the additional constitutional document, which in this case is the town charter, that distinguishes some of the roles and responsibilities.
Right, I have that, and I've highlighted that as well. So
Right,
I'm very familiar with that.
And many of those provisions are clear on their face, again, as to who is responsible for what. And the Board of Selectmen, as a policy-making committee or board, is very important in setting the goals and having the vision. But the actual execution of those goals and policies, at least according to the charter, is really with the town manager. It's kind of like in a corporate arrangement. You have a board of directors, and then you have a chief operating officer or a CEO that is really constitutionally required to follow through on those policies.
Right. So I've had a couple of questions at the retreat, and other people with the same strong town manager government gave some great ideas and examples of how they do it in their town. So one of them was, whenever there's a new job description developed, the Board of Selectmen talk about it and they approve. It's an expenditure, so a new position should be discussed. And I was thinking about that because I heard on Facebook that someone was hired into a brand new job, and as the executive board, I should know before the public knows. And I feel like I should have, as
All
a
you have to do is
professional.
pick up the phone.
I know,
I'm not trying to, honestly, there's things in here that we definitely can provide on a regular basis.
But I shouldn't have to ask. It should just be like, this is the process, executive board.
Well, I could speak to that as well, and I'll follow a thread for you. The charter under Article 4, the town manager, Section 2, there's 3 items there, B, C, and D.
Thank you. So, can you imagine, Gordy, you telling your boss, pick up the phone if you want to find something out from me?
Hey, I just spent $1 million, $100,000 out of our budget, boss, but I didn't tell you about it. But if you want to know, just pick up the phone and call me.
It baffles the mind of how Heather could be so cool and calm and collected there. She did a great job, and now the lawyer is defending the manager.
Right, has to, right?
Well, no, he doesn't. He doesn't work for the manager.
No, she kept looking over to him.
Yeah, of course.
If you notice, she kept looking over like, hey, help me out. Hey, help me out. Bail me out here.
Of course. Now, this is just mind-boggling to me that this continues to go on, because the role of the Board of Selectmen is and I've had this discussion with a longtime former selectman and other people in politics in Dracut, that it's beyond belief of how the manager is now managing the board, not the other way around. Yeah. It's not happening.
Well, you heard that a lot in the campaign materials over the past couple. I want to make sure that the manager, has the tools she needs to run the town. It's like, well, wait a minute. You make sure she has the tools, but she's not running the town.
So when things blow up, the Board of Selectmen will have no, they'll be like, oh, I didn't know about that. I used to tell Dennis, and Dennis Peendack and I had a pretty decent relationship. We were very professional, but I would tell Dennis, and occasionally, I was working a full-time job at the time, and I couldn't get to the town like Joe DeRocco sits his butt in there for hours at a time, and in her office and in the clerk's office, and he makes the rounds, right? And he's influencing those people by being there, by his presence. Well, I couldn't do that, but I would tell Dennis, Dennis, I don't ever want to be on this board and be surprised by the Lowell Sun calling me with something that I don't already know about, that I can't just refer it back to you. And, or I don't want to hear anything that's going on in town from other media. You know, social media wasn't as prevalent as it is now when I was on the board, but it was coming into its own, right? But I would tell him, don't ever let me find out from other sources of what's going on. Hiring somebody, using budgetary money, and then you have the second in command sitting there saying, well, that's during the budget process. That happens during the budget process.
I mean, just the logic of it saying, give me a call if you want to know something that I haven't told you.
Right.
And so if okay, you make that call. Hi, could you tell me everything that you haven't told me yet?
Yeah.
Wow.
And God forbid if she starts rattling off things, because now you know that you're not telling me things.
Right. So at 1.06.38 is when Joe DeRocco comes in and talks about, he talks about this whole thing too. Now, keep in mind that I'm watching this and my jaw drops to the floor and I start hysterically laughing, because you're going to see what he says here and go right ahead. And this is the guy who got his job by what he's talking about.
But all I have to do is ask for this stuff.
I know, but I shouldn't have one-on-one conversations.
Why?
Because everyone should know. We're all aboard.
Madam Chair, if I may, I just want to put out, I mean, I've been around a long time, before the charter, before the town manager. And back then, it's leading to the same thing. I don't think our board should have any say on hiring, firing, or whatever. I don't want it. I don't think we should. But years ago, that's what it was. You had to have 3 votes of the board to get a job in Dracut. But that doesn't. The charter and everything did away with that. I mean, I'm not looking to micromanage the manager. We do her evaluation. If we think she's not doing a good job, then we do something about it. But I don't think that's the case. So,
I'll give you whatever you want. I have an open door policy. You call me, pick up the phone. I mean, seriously, there's not.
No, I understand that, but these were goals for us, and I just wanted to kind of raise the level of professionalism and just have, standard expectations instead of one-off conversations.
Well, you have a couple in here that, under number 2, for example, the 2.3, which is receive budget reports are routine. That's fine. That's easy enough to do. And it should be done. We don't have those things aren't issues, but.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like,
But when it comes time to the nitty-gritty and, personnel issues and decisions that we have to make on a daily basis.
Yeah, I don't care.
I know, but this is leading to that, and that's where.
Not in these are my goals, and it's not leading to that in my mind. I just want, if we're spending money, it's our job to have a role in the decisions.
And that's where the budget comes into play.
Right, so now I get that piece. But even the union contract piece, which again, I'm not saying that you do a poor job on anything. I'm actually looking to be able to bolster my scores for you when it comes time for your review.
Yep.
Because
Richard, you had a reaction to
Oh
some
my
of that.
Lord!
Yeah.
I can't believe that.
Yep.
Can you imagine ever talking to your boss like that?
Right.
And look at her body language. Well, it is what it is. Pick up the phone if you want to talk to me. I am flabbergasted.
Well,
she
can get away with that because she knows she's got the 3 votes that are going to stick with her. And if you notice, if you looked at all of these clips that we've put on, the person sitting next to Joe and also next to Heather, in between Heather and Joe, between Joe and Allison,
doesn't say a word.
Doesn't say anything. Nothing. Contributes 0.
Why did she run? Because she doesn't even...
Well, because she's a vote.
Yeah.
She's a vote, and that's what they wanted. They needed the vote. And unfortunately,
all I hear is say aye. Aye.
It's
all
sad.
All those in favor?
And for
aye.
Joe to say about micromanaging. Go ahead, Phil. You're laughing.
Here's the man who probably sits at town hall for 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
2 hours in Ann's office.
Not so much during the summer.
No.
But normally, because he's away in wherever he is.
He's the guy that kind of shoots me a look if he sees me walking through town hall because I had to go see the building department on something, or I was going to a committee meeting. You know, it's like, what are you doing here? Type of thing. It's like,
right. The ears go right up.
What are you doing here at this time?
Nobody else should be involved in that stuff.
And so I mean, to get to, you know, back to, you know, the list of goals and expectations.
Yeah.
Maybe it should just be expectations and excuses.
Yeah.
Because that's what it was a comparison of. This is what you're expecting. This is what my excuse is.
So at one point, she mentioned that it would take, one of the goals could be on the list for 10 years, right?
Right.
Will she even be around in 10 years?
Right, exactly.
I mean, will any of us be around in 10 years? But you had some other things that they talked about. Real quick, give it a couple minutes, and then we're going to get into
Yeah, I mean, they brought up in the meeting the quarterly budget. They should get quarterly update.
Right.
Budget update.
Well, they used to get a weekly warrant, but then Joe Duracco and those guys didn't want to bother signing them
so they don't
anymore.
have to sign it
So they don't sign them anymore, and that's why the procurement thing came about.
Right, and I think what she was talking about specifically is the tape alluded to a little bit. She said they should hold Heather said they should be holding an executive session on contract negotiations.
Yeah.
So then the whole board is aware of, hey, we've got a contract coming up. We need to negotiate this, that, the other thing. They should be at least, maybe
should
not
be knowledgeable of it.
Just know about it. And she also brought that up, being more involved, kept in the loop about personnel changes if you're firing somebody. Just don't have to say.
Well, let me just stop you right there. I think that Heather unwittingly, maybe she knows, I don't know, but maybe she unwittingly exposed something there, because the questionable hires, there's a rumor out there that a department head's son has been hired for a summer job. Now, how does that happen if you're not connected? Oh, no, you know what they'll say? Well, nobody else wanted the job. But maybe nobody else knew about the job.
Right.
Right? That's the kinds of things that just baffle my mind.
It was posted on the corkboard. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's there for everybody to see.
Yeah, right.
All you had to do was walk into the town hall.
Oh, call me.
Call me.
Call me. I would have told you this job is available.
I think they refer to that as being hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, hidden in plain sight.
Perhaps we all need to start making weekly phone calls to town hall to see what's going on.
Kudos to Heather Santiago Hutchins for the job she's doing in quietly, calmly, and methodically, as it looks to me. And I'm just an observer because, you know, I don't have an open line to Heather.
Putting a spotlight on all these
but
things.
because she's frustrated.
Yep.
She wants to know what happens. What's the board's role in strategic planning? It's not only during the budget session. It should be ongoing.
It seems to me that they should have a primary role in strategic planning.
Exactly. But that, one of the telling things that the manager said is, well, that's getting into micromanaging. No, that's not getting into micromanaging. I sit here as a representative of the taxpayer and the community. I need to know when you're going to be hiring somebody and for what reason you're going to be hiring, and where that money's coming out of the budget if it wasn't already in the budget. Or if you plan on doing it, don't just tell me that we're hiring a new second IT person to handle posting of minutes, right? Wow. I want to know, can't we see what the job description is? Can't we see if it's really what, maybe there's something we want to add to it that you may not think of.
So get this, so you or I as a citizen can request to see that job description.
Yeah.
But it seems like Ann is saying because it's
it's a
job under her, that the Board of Selectmen are not allowed to see that job
Well,
description.
Ann should just say anytime there's a hire or fire, that just forward it over to the selectmen, just so they know. FYI,
That's
we
right.
fired this person today. FYI, we're going to hire these 2 people today.
Well, let's move on to a state and local. We only have 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes left. But anybody hear anything about the upcoming election for state representative? Haven't heard a word.
Been very quiet.
Very, very quiet, which is really, you know, going to help the sitting rep, which is good.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, because we certainly don't want Brian Bogue to become the next representative, right?
So I mean, Colleen has typically voted very much in, you know, what her district wants.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think of the Biden Inflation Reduction Act? Now, isn't that a total bait and switch.
That's an oxymoron right
title.
there.
Huh? Richard, what do you think about
It's
that?
just bait for the upcoming November election.
Yeah.
They're trying anything they can do to rake in votes.
So the GBO, right? Do I have that right? The government oversight, whatever it is,
yeah.
or the
Budget
joint
oversight?
or the
Budget?
the joint committee come out and says that this is not going to reduce inflation at all.
Well, of course not. I mean, you can't spend your way out of inflation. You can't dig yourself out of a hole.
Today, do you have
that
that
to FDR.
queued up on that Seinfeld thing?
Yes.
That Seinfeld thing? Well, because we're going to probably end it on that. But Biden announced today that college debt is going to be forgiven for certain people under certain guidelines, particularly under $145,000. If you make under $145,000, he's going to forgive the debt. First of all, he has no right to forgive the debt, according to Nancy Pelosi, who said that's the job of Congress, right? A month ago, but now she's all in favor of it. But this is the little thing from Seinfeld that I thought was funny, that this is typical of what, just going to write it off.
Yeah.
Now, you had some statistics that you went in and looked at. I mean, one of the statistics is 43 million people that have
40 million is what I saw, but yeah.
for debt. And out of that 43 million, probably 20 million of them are going to be affected by this.
Right. And then, that was the $10,000 for the people that make under $125,000. But then there's another thing that says anyone that got a Pell Grant, $20,000, up to $20,000 of the Pell Grant will be washed away. And what I looked at is the states give out 7 million Pell Grants per year.
Wow.
And on average $4,000. So that equals $28 billion.
Wow.
For 1 year. So then multiply that out by how many years people haven't paid off their Pell Grants yet. Probably at least 5. So that's 140 million just in Pell Grants.
Right. So what they're basically doing, Phil and Rich, is they're basically buying votes.
They're trying
Absolutely.
to buy votes. Yeah.
But I think that this isn't just going to fly through Congress. That they're not going to accept this stuff, and they're gonna challenge it. I predict that there will be a challenge.
And on the back end, the IRS is going to get you because that $10,000 is income.
That's right, and the 87,000 IRS agents that they're going to hire under the Inflation Act.
Yeah. I'll have to post that photograph on Facebook we have of the new IRS uniforms.
Yes, but
the next thing coming, John, I have a prediction.
What?
You know what? It's a God-given right. Everyone should own a house. So they're going to pay anyone that makes under $125,000. They're going to pay off their mortgage.
Yeah, pay off their mortgage, and the government will own it, which is a step in the direction of communism and socialism. Well, with that, folks, we've come to an end of another great show, folks, and it flew by as usual.
Yes.
So, Gordy, take it away.
Folks, we appreciate you guys watching us, our show every week or every 2 weeks, and we're always going to provide you the latest things going on around Dracut.
We'll be back next week.
We'll be back next week for a special episode, and we're trying to plan Old Home Days. We'll keep you alert about that on our Facebook page. And when it's Wednesday night and it's 6:30, it's What's Happening Dracut. Good night, Dracut.
Good night, everybody.